Okay, we're learning the Mammar v'achaltem ochel. It's a pasuk in Yoel, and we're applying it to the idea of the Kohanim consuming, or Aaron Hakohen consuming the parts of the carbon that the Kohen would eat. So the pasuk in Yoel says that v'achaltem ochel v'savaya, you eat and be satisfied. V'laltem Hashem Alekechem, you'll praise Hashem, your Lord, Asher Asim Imachem Lahafli, that he's done wonders. People will never be embarrassed. So the Medrash says B'Yalkut, it says Ushehu Mevarach es Tzadikim. It says when Hashem blesses the righteous, Koifel es birkasam, he blesses, he doubles the blessing. It says V'chaltem ochel, you will eat. So the translation, as we put it in the English, said, hold on, that it says that and you shall eat, eating and be and say this. It says 2 times eating. So when he gives a bracha to the tzaddikim, he says it 2 times. And also it says the second thing is that you'll have what to eat, and therefore you won't be embarrassed. So I think the double actually is in the chaltem v'lo, the eating and not being embarrassed. So he says, Hine inyan kavanas achilahu. What's the whole point of eating? This is an idea that we've learned many times. There's the way the system of the souls and the angels in the worlds of creation, yitzira, formation and action. Like it says, I've created and I've formed. So meaning to say, the Yesh Malachim Debriya, there's angels in different places, in different worlds. You have the angels that are in the world of creation, and there's Malachim, the angels in the world of formation, and there's angels in the place of action. So in heaven, the sustenance of the angels means, how do the angels sustain themselves? Everything sustain itself. So Hashem creates a something, it has to have a sustenance. So how does the angel sustain itself? They take energy and strength, ruchni, a spiritual one, in comprehending Hashem. And through that they're serving Hashem. So through the masigim, through the hasaga of comprehension and serving Hashem, that gives them mazon, that gives them sustenance. When Shekasa Barabas, as it's also brought down in the Medrash, the end of Parshas Mishpatim, on the verse, Kishmi bikirboy, my name is within the angel. God was talking to Moshe about the angel that's going to lead the Jewish people within Eretz Yisrael. So we're to Eretz Yisrael. So he says, Shmi bikirboy, my name is within the angel, meaning the name is the sustenance of bikirboy inside the angel. What is the sustenance? For an angel, it's not physical food, like it says, Moshe Rabbeinu ate the food of angels while he was when he was in heaven. So the idea is, what is the eating? The food is, the sustenance is Ziv HaShechina, the ray of Hashem. That's why it says Shmi B'Kirbi. Shenemer va'atem mechayis kulam. It says you give life to everything. So there's the Hishavos is creation, and Mechaya is giving life, and the vitality comes each creation according to its intended sustenance, and the intended sustenance for the angels is the Ziv HaShechina, or the Ziv HaShechina. It says ubishtalshus madregas, and through many river revavises, tens of thousands of intermediaries, shehem hamalachim, and all the angels that the ziv comes through them, shebechol oilmus, in every world, in every situation, she'over hashefa, the flow, derech shamu beineim, goes between them and amongst them, like it says v'chol karavai is from my intestines, v'chol karavai, that through shihuim bechinas karavayim shederech bam over hashefa. So just like food gets processed through the food gets processed through the intestines, so too there's spiritual intestines that processes the spiritual sustenance, that over hashefa v'hamaychel, that the food, the sustenance and the flow, and eventually comes from their physical sources of foods. Meaning that doesn't mean that boom, a piece of tuna fish comes on your plate, but the fact that there's food in the world that the person could prepare for themselves in the physical form, it's a process, and it goes from From ruchni to gashmi, from spiritual to physical. This is based on the teaching that's brought down in the Reishis Rabbah. The Reishis Rabbah, Incha Esav Mamata, there's not even a hair of grass, a blade of grass in this world. That there's not a mazel, but more of a consciousness that's maka that instructs it to grow. And that instruction is really coming from the process, how the spiritual power of different foods gets processed through the system of creation above. And in this world, it comes out in different forms, in different places, in different ways. There's different energies and different types of foods that get created. In all the that's what he says. There's tens of thousands of mimutzoim. There's tens of thousands of tens of thousands of different types of processing. That these processing comes out in this world in different forms of different opportunities for sustenance. Shamazel hu koach ruchni. This mazel, this spiritual consciousness that's focused on this specific type of food. The and it goes higher and higher because even the direct level of the mazel that's watching it has something that's watching it, because like it says, it goes through a process of the spiritual intestine system that brings the food from something ruchni to something gashmi. And going upwards, it goes all the way to the source of all the sources, the highest of angels, in the world of Bria creation. Because in creation, so basically creation is the world of creation. What we in theory understand, that we, Bereshis bara Elokim, God created the world. So everything was created. But in the world of creation is where things start to come into form of separation. Mishami pared. It means that it's now a creation versus being totally a part of Hashem. So when it comes to creation, it doesn't just come a creation, boom, we're in this physical world. It's a process. And the beginning of the process in the world of creation, but there it's still very spiritual and very much godly. In our world, it's much more of the world of action, has much less consciousness of godliness. We don't see it. And therefore we have to find God, so to say, in this world. So he says, but if you go all the way back to its root, every source goes up to the higher angels in the world of creation, and they take the word of God. That's why they say that it's the word of God that's in the food. It's the word of God that starts from the beginning of the process of how the food comes into being. And over there, it's a sustenance that gives kind understanding of godliness. And from that starting point, it drops down in a chain-like solution. And creates a physical food. And each one has its source. There's the pnei ashar, for instance, is the side of the ox. Shemer kavod, that's in the chariot. Shehem malachim is gvura, and those are the angels. The shor represents gvura, even though the aryeh, which is the lion, maybe seems to some people to be a more severe animal. But as far as the animals of the Merkava go, the lion is in the side of chesed, the kindness, and the ox, which is so to say a gvura, an intense animal, that's on the left side. So from there it goes all the way up, let's say, to the pnei ashar, which is the source of the foods of the red. That's why the meat is red. And these are the souls of the animals. And from the birds or from the eagle, comes the different birds that are in creation. So he says, when there is sustenance, so there's the creation of something and there's the chayis of something. There's the hisavus. That's what he says. From there is nisave. He says over here, he says, that's the creation. And then he says when the sustenance flows through the angels, then it becomes a level of chayis, and that's the idea of birchas Hashanah. And we say v'chol mini tvasei, all types of different grains that get blessed as the blessing, the flow of God's Dvar Hashem not only creates but gives life, and it should be each area. That's why we have different places, and Makim also takes place. There's different areas that have different types of growths and better places to grow things, etc. All the different laws of nature of the food chain is goes in a process, not just starting from this world, but starting from the beginning of the spiritual source of the Merkava in the world of creation. So what's the point of all this? What's the point of this life force that comes into the food chain? So when the person, man, who is also from the beginning of creation, eats from there. And the difference fundamentally between, even if you have souls, that where the souls, even if we're not going into the source of the souls is much higher than the angels. But even in a revealed sense of the souls are always the pnimi of something, the internal of something. The angels are more of a chitzanya, an external. The difference is in the source of creation. The neshama of a person was created from the machshava, from the thought process, alu b'machshava, and the angels are created from speech. Anything created from speech is connected to external, is the chitzonius. So he's saying even if you have the angels in the world of Bria, and they're tremendous angels, right? Michael, etc. But nevertheless, the neshamas are the pnimis, are the internal of these worlds. So he says, Sheish and Shamas the Bria, for instance, their souls in the world of Bria. They're much more internal than the angels. And when they eat, they added to their intellect. So the difference is that when the man eats it and the soul eats it, so it goes all the way up to the human source, and the human source is the kings before the kings of Lifnei Malach Malach, and they're the kings from before, a higher level, more panemius. So the point is that the point of the food chain is what the Alter Rebbe is trying to address over here is if the food chain eventually comes down, and then it goes. The bottom line is that the man should eat it. So what's the elevation there? What changes when the man eats the food versus the food making its way down here? So the food down here means a entity of food is a potential charge of energy. Right, but when you eat it, it charges the person. If you don't eat it, so the energy's there. The apple doesn't cease to be an apple just because no one ate it. When someone eats it, then makes a bracha and uses it for the right things, then the food is feeding something. But it's not just feeding something. The feed itself gives an elevation. Why? Because man is a pnimi, is an internal, and a man could bring the food back higher from its source. If its source starts from the angels, so now it gets a panemius, it gets a makeover and in an internal elevation. So that's what he's saying. When man eats the food, he takes it to the root, but in their pneumius is an internal connection to godliness, to the light, to the energy of God. That's the man that sits on the chariot. Only man can bring a person through food. There's an elevation that only through humans, that the humans doing it and using it in the proper way. If you don't use it in the proper way, then you've not fulfilled your abilities and what you can do when you eat foods. The person is the middle energy that has the ability to take something that's from the food animal kingdom and bring it up to the higher level, to the Pnei Adam, to the image of man within Adam Kadmon. V'hinei, Kamoshem Malachim Da'atin Achshavim L'Bechinas Behemis L'Gabi Neshamas. So now he's saying, so what are we saying? If the food source starts from the angels and makes its way down and eventually comes in the form of a piece of meat, which we're going into the carbon, right? So the carbon is a piece of meat, and what happens? So what we're trying to explain here, the Alter Rebbe is not saying it directly, but there's two types of feed that happens even in the carbon. In the carbon, we have the part that goes on the mizbeach, which is the animal, and you have the part that the kohanim eat. So there's the part that the animal gets burnt, and that's one section. That means it's being eaten, it's being consumed by the mizbeach. And then you have the part that the kohen eats, and that elevates it to panemius. So just like there's the food that the angels, he says, are considered like animals. Shamalachim da'ata, the angels today are considered like animals versus the souls, which is neshamas, which are much more pnimi. Because the source of the angels come from the animals of the chariot. That's their life source. Shehem bechinas mekabel min adam elyon, and they receive from the adam elyon on top of the chair of the kisei. Kach afilu neshamas da'ata, so too. And this is the question, this is the point of the Mammar. Meaning to say, seemingly, you're the king of the castle, right? You're the man is the one who could, the humans are the one who could take up and elevate food to a pnimis that no one else can. But that's all in the space of this world. But so too, he says that the souls of today, of everything in this world, meaning today, we don't mean 2024 or Tufshin Peidal. We're talking about the souls of from creation until Mashiach. Is the Gabi and Neshama, but the souls that will be revealed, there'll be new souls that will be revealed in the time of Mashiach. Ikram Gamkim Hemes, they also, the souls of today are like the animals of tomorrow. Kedisa Barai Mehem is brought down in the Zohar. Shesh Neshamas Bechinas Behemoth. There's also animal souls that are the level of animal. So the souls in this world, in this space, in the space before Mashiach, are like the angels in our time. We become like the animals for the time to come. Meaning to say that we're as elevated as we are. We're going to have a much greater elevation, just like food gets elevated through man eating it. So too, the souls that come down after the Mashiach, the souls of the Asad Lavai, they're going to be like the humans, and we're going to be like this, like the animals that get elevated. And that's the point of the question. The point of the question: how does that work? How, if we're able to elevate now, do we become, or do we need, or are we lacking something that needs to be elevated? And the basis of the
So this is not about food in general, like fruits and vegetables.
no, I mean
it's about animals and the grains that's
animals,
offered.
grains, all feed, all types of sustenance of foods, fish, everything, whatever.
What about fruits and vegetables? That's not in the korbanot.
We're not fruits, well, first of all, there are certain fruits in the Bikurim, for instance, the first fruit that get brought on Shavuos. We do it to
So it's about all foods, every
all
kind.
foods, all kind of sustenance, all kind of foods that come down through the food chain from the spiritual to the physical. So when we eat it, we elevate it. And the Alter Rebbe is adding the end of this last paragraph on the page that we're going to be ourselves become food.
And that's further saying that the souls that come down in Mashiach are going to be higher than us, like our current people.
Yeah, I mean, again,
we're like the animals.
We're going to be like the animals of today. They're going to be in the next life. In the next stage. We're going to be the animals of like today. And he actually comes to say, the bottom line. He says, therefore, if we're going to be like animals compared to the souls, so just like animals today need elevation, we're going to need elevation from those souls. And what's that mean? So what are we saying? We're saying that the angels, even in the world of Bria and creation, through the food chain, they eventually become physical into a form of food. So what does that mean in our souls? How are we going to become into form of food? That they're just like the spiritual now becomes animals, so too our souls are going to go into physical food. And what is that? The Levyasin and Sharabar is going to be the great feast of the fish, and the great ox is going to be the source of that food is going to be the souls of today. Tzadikim, the righteous, meaning the righteous of the souls of the future, I'm assuming, will eat from the Levyas and the Sharabar. And then just like food today gets elevated, so too the foods of Mashiach through the Levyas and Sharabar, through the Tzadikim, will get elevated. Just like today, our souls, we elevate physical food. The Sharshim and Malachim that come from the angels. So too, that we're going to be ourselves feed, and then we're going to get elevated by the animals, by the higher level souls. Here the Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek, it seems like, says a note. The Karva, he says like this: V'karv hadaber v'vadei loimer. It's very, it's almost sure to say. I'm not sure what the what they're coming to eliminate over here. But he says it's kind of sure it's only going to be a spark of the soul that's going to go into this physical food. By when hey Ariel, and by the soul, the spiritual souls eating, consuming the spark, of that goes into the food, and the ray from the soul, yisal gama shorish, then the root of the soul. Meaning, it's not like the whole soul will go into the food. An element, he calls it a nitzas, a spark of the soul will go into the food, and by the tzaddikim elevating that spark, it's going to schlep, it's going to carry with it even up to the root. The kahai gavnehu b'karbonis, that's the same idea of karbonis, like we said in another place. All the animals, I mean, it's not the angel itself, but because the source of the animal comes from such a high level of angels and all the elements above, they all get elevated when this physical cow goes onto the carbon, onto the mizbeach. At least nefesh behema, that the source that they take, where they're taken from, the source gets elevated when the outcome of the source, meaning even if it's in the form of a physical animal, gets sacrificed. So too, when Mashiach comes, it's not going to be the whole neshama inside the fish, but it's going to be a spark of it, and that spark, when it gets elevated, with it will be elevations of the source. But Tamhu, and he says, what is the reason? So saying basically what he's asking now is, what's going to be this need for elevation? Why are we going to have to go into the Shor and Levyasan? Because what is lacking today that we're going to need elevation tomorrow? So he says, because today all the light is within the way Hashem is within the world. Hashem fills the world. The source of our creation, of even Memale, is Kav V'chut. Kav V'chut is the line that breaks through the Tzimtzum. That there's a Tzimtzum, and the source of after the Tzimtzum comes the Or Yosher, the direct light. And that direct light manifests itself slowly through Tzimtzumim, a whole idea of Tzimtzumim, of contractions, until it comes into this physical space. But the whole idea of time and space is after the Tzimtzum. Shu Achri Tzimtzum Ha'arein Sof, after the infinite light was contracted. And that's where we come from. We come from already a limited space. We come from even any limitation, how great as it is, it's limited. So it be defined. So that's where we come from. So we can't get out of our sort of self, out of our limitations. Mashiach comes. That's going to be a revelation of the Sovav, of the external light, of the encompassing light, outside of the Kavachut, of the direct. What's a Kavachut? The Kavachut, a Kav is a line, right? The line has a top and an end. That's the way the light goes down. The very fact that Atzilus has more revelation of godliness than our world is the idea of a Kavachut, is a line. And the top of the line is more, and the bottom of the line is less. The Sovav has no beginning and no end. It's a circle. A circle is not a line. So a circle, my father used to say, if you have a round table, everyone's sitting at the head. Why? Because everywhere is the head. So too, Sovav Kalam is encompassing. There's no beginning, there's no end. So everything's equally a creation, everything's equally godliness. So therefore, when the souls that come from Sovav, they're much higher level, because then there's no the very fact that there could be a top and a bottom, that there's a chut, is already a limitation. That's not a line, that's a circle. That comes before the line. That circle's outside the line. And that's where the souls come from later. So in order for us to get out of our limitations, no matter how great it is, even if you're a soul of the world of Atzilus, but never, and means it's revealed the levels of Atzilus, but it's revealed the level of the beginning. The beginning has an end. And therefore they're much, much greater. And they're much more greater, so they have the ability, and there's a necessity of the elevation. All right. So that's what he's saying, that's the system, the food chain system. And he says that's what Yoel is saying. The prophet Yoel, V'chaltem ochel, Pirush, Davishekvar nechel. What does he mean by achaltem ochel? That V'chaltem will eat food. Achaltem ochel could either mean that you'll eat and eat. But he's saying you eat the eat. What does that mean? Pirush Davishekvar nechel, something that will itself be eaten. Our souls, that we were man, and we ate here, and we did elevations. We will be consumed to be elevated. Therefore, Yoel says that we will praise Hashem for the wonders. In the time of Moshiach, after all the refinements and the elevations, of all our work, right? This is a concept that the Alter Rebbe is focusing on kind of the very direct idea over here of a second elevation. But this is brought down many times that there's second elevations. We learned this with the Shvatim and Yosef, that the Shvatim did their elevation, but they get elevated a second time by Yosef. Even within the system, there's a double elevation. But here he's talking about a much greater double elevation of all things. So he says, when Mashiach comes, we've done everything. We've refined, we've elevated. All the low things that have been mixed with klipa and tuma, etc., are going to be elevated. Through who's going to do it? We're going to do. That's the work that we're doing now. And then it gets into the second completion of our souls through the souls of the times of Mashiach. So then it's going to be the Eishes Chayil, the female is going to be a terespiler. She's going to the woman is going to be a crown to her husband. That is going to be a reflecting light. What's the reflecting light? The reflecting light is that the light goes down from up down. As it goes down, seemingly it lessens. But when at that bottom point where it hits, lowest point, and then from there there's a transformation going upwards. We're going to take now the lowest and we're going to elevate it backwards. That's a reflecting light. That's the Or Chayzer. And the Or Chayzer goes to a higher space. That's your Malchus, that's the crown. The Malchus, that's the receiver, is now going to be the crown. No, it's Seifan. Connect the end. Sorry, Beth, I think this static coming over. I'm going to put you on mute if that's okay. So, and there's going to be a keser that the Malchus is going to be the crown. Malchus b'chinas keser. And then we know that it's going to be that all Malchus itself, what we've done in this world, is going to be the one that directs the flow. And that day, that the life, the water of life is going to go from Yerushalayim itself. Like it says in the prophecy of Zechariah, it's going to go in two directions, etc. But the idea is that the source of life, the receiver today is going to be the giver. And that's going to be wondrous. That God makes it as a wonder. That the end of creation that gets refined, and a double refinement that's going to be a wonder, that itself is going to be a source of life. This is a complicated concept. I mean, the question is, when you say that the receptacle, the malchus, becomes the mashpia, it doesn't mean that you a lot of times today, a lot of what's driving a lot of ideas are based on this today, without the knowledge of the people that are behind it. But there's a spirit of Moshiach there. Included in this, I believe, is the feminist movement. This is the idea of Mashiach, that the Makabel becomes a mashpia. But I think that what could be wrong is like when they say the moon is going to be like the sun. I don't believe it means that the moon is going to be like the sun, and therefore it's going to be just like the sun now is a source of light and it does its own thing. The moon is also going to be. It's going to be a source of life, but it's going to show that the Makabel, the benefit of being the Makabel, means to say I don't have to change myself to be like something else. Who I am is going to be something positive. So positive it's going to be a crown of the husband. That what the same concepts of what today is looked at as something that receives, that those ideas are going to be giving. And that's the idea of Eishes Chayil, Teres Baila, that the woman's going to be the crown of the husband. Not that she's changed like the husband, but that she's going to be the crown of the husband. The moon is not going to change and become like the sun. What today the moon is receiving from the sun, that itself is going to be a source of light. So therefore, that's what he's saying. It's lahapi. It's a wonder that what the soif ma'aseh machshav, that the or chayzer, the reflecting light that comes from Yerushalayim, is going to be a source of light. That's why it says there's not going to be an embarrassment. What's the embarrassment? He says what's the concept of embarrassment? My people won't be embarrassed. In general, Knesset Yisrael is called the kala, the bride, right? We're the bride. Malchus is the bride. Zah, the midos, is the groom. So what does it mean that is not going to be embarrassment? So he explains. Here on Oimrim, we say in the blessings of marriage, Meher Shama Kol Kala. We want to hear the voice of the kala. What does it mean to hear the voice of the bride? The voice is to give something. In a voice, it's something that you're communicating a coil of voice and idea, which means hamshacha v'hashpa, to give flow. It says today we say kol Yaakov. Today the voice is the voice of Yaakov, which is mitchinas techar, which is masculine. Nimshach hashpa b'nikva gives from masculine, gives to the female. But today there's no voice. The kala doesn't have a voice. Malchus is only receiving. Therefore, in a marriage ceremony, in the Jewish marriage ceremony, the groom says, "Hariyat mukadeshes, you are sanctified, engaged to me," in the word kedusha, right? And the bride doesn't respond. In Jewish customs, the bride doesn't talk back to the groom. She's quiet. She doesn't even say yes. Because at that moment of the unification of the chassid and kala, the kala is a total mekabel, and therefore she has no voice. She's not a mashpia. Avalasid, when Moshiach comes, she's al hamalchus acher kol berurim. That malchus, after all the refinements and the elevations that the world goes through, and malchus gets elevated, the moon will be like the sun. Eshes chayla teres baila, lies eshes chayla teres baila. The woman will be the wife will be a crown to her husband. And the power of the reflecting light. That's what I'm trying to say. It's still a reflecting light, but it's a power of the reflecting. We don't value the reflecting light. We say you're just a reflector. What are you? You're not a source of anything. We're going to see that whole mindset's going to change. Keser Malchus, the Malchus becomes the crown. V'tiyahia mashpia. That's what we say. Meher Yishama Kol Kala. We want to hear Kol Chasin v'Kol Kala. We want to hear the voice of the Kala. But the voice of the Kala means when the refinement of the receiver is so strong that concept becomes a makabel. And therefore there'll be no longer embarrassment, because now the Kala, we're going to see in a second, is an embarrassment. She doesn't say anything. We have a Mishnah that says, what does the bride do if in the moment of her wedding she has to eat the carbon pesach? So it says, the bride turns her face to the side and she eats. She doesn't eat in front of everyone. That Simon the Ochel min Chavre Behei Pirsh Misbayish Mistakabeh. It's a Simon she'oichel mishal chaver mispayish listakalboy. He says because the kala gets her food from the chasen, so it says a sign of a person. That's amazing Gemara actually. The sign of a person that the person's eating from someone else is then he's embarrassed to look at it, or she's embarrassed to look at her or him, whatever I'm saying. And the person's taking from someone else. Simon she'oichel mishal chaver. What's a sign that you're eating from someone else? Doesn't have to mean that someone brought you a sandwich. It can mean in many levels. Is mispayish l'stakal, but you can't look at them. You're embarrassed because you have to receive from them. So he says, Simon the achim min chavri. How do you know a sign that someone's eating from their friend? Is misbayish. Bahis means you're embarrassed. Mistakal to look at that person. Because we're only receiving, malchus is only receiving today. When she eats, she turns her face to the side and eats. She can't look at it. She's embarrassed to look at the person who gives her husband who gives her. So she turns her face and eats to the side. So that's the way the makabel is makabel today. We're no longer going to be embarrassed. After the refinement and elevation, she's going to be the crown to her husband. And she will be the mashpia. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. And that's why it says, that's why the bracha says, when Yoel says that in times of Mashiach, that not only are you going to eat, but it's going to be le'yavaishu, you're not going to be embarrassed. Because the idea of the makabel is to be eshes chayil teres baila b'chinas mashpia. Let's skip a little. It says, let's skip the parentheses until Beis. Let's go to Beis on page 5. Because Ayuvan, from this we'll understand the medrash that says in Tzav On the pasuk Zeh Korban Aaron B'Yom Mashachasei. This is the sacrifice of Aaron Hakohen on the day that he was anointed. It says that what happened. The story goes is that Shimshon, the Gibor, right? Shimshon, the judge of the Jewish people, sees a lion there's a bee's nest in the lion. So he says, Shimshon Temei, I believe Shimshon was wondering to himself, Ari Oichel Kol Chayis. Lion consumes all animals. He's the predator, right? But here in the lion, there's a beehive. He himself becomes food. That's what he says, from the one who eats becomes of sustenance himself or itself. So too, so the Medrash says that's the same thing over here. Aaron eats all the carbon. He's the one who's able to sanctify and to bring atonement to everyone. That someone brings a carbon for atonement by the kohen eating. Now he himself has to make a carbon. Here it says this is the carbon of Aaron. So Aaron himself needs a carbon. He's the one who's fixing everyone. Now he needs to be fixed. What is that the carbon Aaron? Well, if he ain't moving, the Alter Rebbe says, seemingly, what's the question? Like, what's such a big deal? So Aaron Hakohen, he needs a carbon and he gives a carbon. The idea is, when it says that the kohen eats the carbon, it says the Torah is telling us there's two levels of consumption of a carbon. Achas achilas adam, which means achilas hakoyanim, when the kohen eats the carbon. Shakoyanim oichlin ubaylim ischaprin. When a kohen eats, let's say a chatas, a sin offering, by the kohen eating, it's not just that you're giving the kohen a gift, so the kohen gets paid for his service. The kohen gets the gift. The kohen's doing your service. What's the service? By eating, that gives you a kapara. And the other one's achilas mizbeach, like I said before. And then there's the consumption of the actual mizbeach altar. That the eating of the kohanim, which is which is bittul, the fundamental difference between the name of Hashem of 45 verses 52 is is total nullification to Hashem. V'nachnu ma, we're what? The word ma means what? I'm nothing. And ban is the name of Hashem that it's from the world of creation, of Bria. So the kohen is higher than the person, and therefore the kohen is able to achieve atonement that the person on their own cannot. So what the first level of achila, the first consumption, is the animal eating, the lion that eats the carbon. Pnei Ari, the achel carbons, it's the image of the lion that eats the carbon. Like I said before, the angels only reach an external, so it's an external fixing where things externally have gone corrupt. So we take that external and fix it, but we still haven't penetrated internally. And that itself gives a reich nechayach, a smell of appetizing smell to Hashem, which is all in the world of biyah, in the world of creation, that the technicalities have been fixed. But when the kohen eats the achel kolil, that he eats the carbon. But how does the adam, the man of the internal of the kisi hakavod, how does Hashem on the higher level consume and get, so to say, and make an atonement? That's through the kohanim eating. That's why we say, make man in our image. The man is a reflection of the essence of Hashem, and therefore through the kohen eating is something that the mizbeach can't do, which is represented by the lion eating. This sort of means that the kohen eats, and the person who brings the carbon gets elevation, gets a redemption, gets atonement. Nimsa. So what's the bottom line? Who fixes and takes it in turn an internal fixing of the sin, and what has to be elevated is Aaron. So he's the fixer. So too, the Aryeh does it on the Chitzonius, who am Mavar. So the Aryeh, which at its source comes and fixes the animal in the Chitzonius, That's even greater than the angels themselves. It's the source of the angels. And there comes the power to do the consumption of the Mizbeach. And then there's the consumption of the coin. And we've explained in other places that any ability to refine means you've been refined. Only because you are complete yourself are you able to refine someone else. You can't refine. A person can't refine. The coin can't affect refinement and atonement if you yourself are not fixed. As it says in the Sifri, it says, I think it also applies to Achashverosh, connected to Purim. It says, you haven't yet conquered next to your palace and you're going to conquer other nations, right? You haven't fixed your problems at home and you're running to try to conquer new places. You first fix what you have. So how could Aaron Hakohen elevate if he's not complete? So he must be complete. Commotion is bar makamach, as explained. The kach aser. This is one of the reasons why we don't eat before we daven. One shouldn't eat before they daven. Why? Because when a person eats, he or she elevates the foods that they're eating, the sparks that they're eating in the foods. To elevate the food. That's why we say we start with the mizbeach when we say in the benching, right? We say the verse right before we bench. We say this is the table. So we start with the pasach mizbeach b'sayim b'shulchan. We say the mizbeach is the shulchan, is our table. That's an elevation. So why don't we eat before we daven? Because until you've yourself refined yourself through your prayers, through your davening, how could you expect? And you can't wake up in the morning, eat yourself a full breakfast, and the breakfast is not the breakfast. Eating the breakfast is to elevate the food, but you haven't yet went to shul, you haven't davened, you haven't refined yourself from the night before. Then you all of a sudden you want to be able to affect the refinement. Because first you daven, then you eat. Traditionally, there's obviously exceptions to the rule. Because when a person davens, and the daven's a time of battle, shatz sloisa means a time of prayer, is shras krova, is a time of fighting. Krov is a battle. And you're bringing godliness down into yourself. In the 18 blessings of the Shemona Esrei, like we say, Baruch Atah Hashem, we're bringing Baruch is lahamshach, to bring down godliness within ourselves. Oh, it's only then, when the person could sit down to eat, then you have the power to elevate the foods. But if you haven't yet davened, how are you going to elevate the foods?
How are you going to daven if you haven't had coffee in the morning?
Okay, yeah, so that's true. That the famous story of the Rebbe Rashab, the Rebbe Marash, Tzemach Tzedek tells the Rebbe Marash's wife, who was instructed by the doctors to eat early in the morning. So she was very careful. She wouldn't eat before she davened. So she would wake up even earlier to daven, and then she would eat. And the Tzemach Tzedek said what she's doing is wrong because it's too difficult. And he says you're davening to eat. Better eat, and then you'll work on it. So it's not, if yes, in Chabad, for instance, we're not in Chabad. Others are very careful. In Chabad, we're not that careful as far as you're not supposed to wash before eating for sure. Bread is a major food, but to have a little coffee, a drink, of course, and you have to actually wash your mouth out. And even in Chabad, we have mezainis, lighter foods. We do eat, but in other circles, they're very careful not to eat, and even mezonot. But drinking, most people do.
Chocolate and coffee are essential. The coffee's got the caffeine and the chocolate has the sugar.
The sugar, exactly. So I'm saying, but I'm not talking. We're talking about sitting down with washing for sure. We don't wash. No one washes before you daven. You shouldn't, at least, because it's a major food which needs major elevation. To eat a proper breakfast, but to have, if you need something light before you daven, especially if the minyan sometimes is later, it's obviously, like I said, it all depends on the circumstances. It's like this. So if the lion, so to say, is eating the carbon, means the lion's refined. So to Aaron, if Aaron's eating the sacrifices, that Aaron represents that by him eating it, it's that he's bringing now the Adam Elyon to consume and elevate and refine this person. Shalakisi, that's on the chair that's above the line that's carrying the animals that are carrying the chair. Because of movement, so therefore we understand. So Aaron Hakohen is not just a nobody. Aaron Hakohen is the great avod of the Kohen that represents great levels. So therefore, but the bottom line is he has to be totally refined himself. Therefore, Aaron, like Moshe says, we're ma. Ma means we're nothing. We're totally nullified to Hashem. Aaron's just like Moshe, the level of ma. Aaron Mahu, like in the story of the rebellion of Korach against Aaron, Moshe says Aaron's Mahu. Why are you going against Aaron? He represents total bittul. Ma again means what? What is like I'm nothing. I'm nachnu ma. Moshe and Aaron says we're what? We're nothing. We have no. We're totally nullified to Hashem. It means they've reached such a refinement of self-refinement. Vimkain. So therefore, the Rebbe goes back to the question of the Mammar of the Medrash. God lo hatamia eich achshav yetzim mimenu korban. So how could Aaron himself need to bring a korban? If he himself is so refined that he could effect atonement for everyone else, why does he need atonement? Now he has to get refined. The very fact that he needs to bring the sacrifice means that Aaron himself needs an elevation. By bringing his sacrifice that Aaron Hakohen had to bring every day, he gets elevated. So this is the question of the Medrash. Why does Aaron have to bring a korban if he himself is elevated? Seemingly it's a big question, so we're just going to get to the beginning of the answer. The idea is like this. So this will go back to the beginning of the Mammar. That just like the souls today, that we've achieved great things, and through the time of history, from the beginning of creation until Moshiach comes, we're actually Basti Lagani, we're able to bring down the idea that godliness could rest in this world, and we have the power of the refinement of to the level of so to say Malchus has or Choser reflecting light, but that's all up to a limited space. But that's all within the Kavachut. That's all we said within the space of the line. There's a top and there's a bottom. But when to reach even an out of space experience, which is the Soivev, which is the encompassing light. Then we ourselves have to get a second elevation. That's why the souls of today become the food of tomorrow. It says, like we said before, that those who ate become food. Even the high great souls that today themselves are able to elevate. But according to what's happening when Moshiach comes, for the souls of the future, like we said, the encompassing light, we're going to be like animals themselves who need to be elevated. And this is what Shimshon saw, that the eater becomes food, the lion becomes a feed. The one itself that eats now becomes itself food. Like we said, the souls of today will become, the sparks will go into the Levyasin and the Sharabar. What's the purpose of it? Not so we should get even a higher elevation, because we can only elevate within space of limitations, but to reach beyond the limitations, that's to get it from Allah. In the line, no matter what, no matter how high you go in the line, no matter how high you go in space, you're in space. You're in limitations. That's Memale Kalam. When you fill something, it's filled within a space. Sovev Kalam is outside space, and outside something that's totally outside of. If it's equal, where there's no beginning, no end. Sovev is the circle, is the eagle. How do you go out of space, from space into outer space? You have to yourself be consumed and to be elevated out of your reality. This is the wonder of Shimshon, right? The Gemara tells us in Sota. Rabbi Yochanan says Shimshon al Shemay Shekadish Baruch Hu Nikra. Shimshon was called after Hashem. Shnemer ki Shemesh Magen Navaya Elikim. Shimshon was from the word Shemesh. And like it says, Shemesh u'Mogen Havaya Elikim, that Havaya Yud Kei Vav Kei is a Shemesh, and the Mogen is Elikim is a shield to the light of the sun. Asher Hashem Havaya U'Bechinas Shemesh, and Havaya is a level of Sovev Kalam. Shelamayla U'Bechinas Shem Elikim, Shu'Bechinas Mogen, that the name Elikim is Teva's nature, that is a shield, Venartik, Lahasta Gil Hashem Havaya, to conceal the lights of the infinite, of Hashem. And the angels, only because there's this screen, are the angels able to receive. So that's all the way is the light, the way it comes through the screening of Elikim. So therefore the angels are able to take the limited light and to make refinement. But when the light of the Havaya comes, that's the light of the Or Sovev, or the encompassing light. So then you yourself become. So what does that mean? So just to finish this paragraph. So what is the real desire of the angels, and so too for the neshamas of the times of Moshiach, is the ishtabe begufat malka. We want to be one with the entity of the king, like it says in other places. Al pasuk ani yishein libiar. I'm asleep, my heart's alive. Shalzeh nemar achalti yarim difshi. I've eaten the honey with the cone. V'zeu inyan kimigvas ha'aryeh rada hadvash. From inside the lion comes the honey. The eater becomes a food to elevate higher. And he continues with this idea of that this is the power of Aaron. That biyomi mashach oso, that the day that he gets anointed, the power of the shemen. The shemen is chachma. And the power, the source of the shemen, it gives the highest level of elevation to Aaron Hakohen, but that he himself needs an elevation to get even higher. And that's the idea of the carbon of Aaron. All right, ladies and gentlemen, wish you a Laila Tov. Again, it's an interesting Mammar, interesting concepts. It's not so easy to understand. I'm sure there's a lot of questions, but the idea, hopefully, we understand. Laila Tov, take care.
You too. Thanks.